seems that across YouTube and also sometimes in the West, that any criticism of Muslim population gets met with, oh, that's just being mean or something. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't think people get it. And part of the reason people don't get it in the West is because they don't have enough encounters with Muslim law or Islamic law, or the attitudes towards other peoples. In other words, basically you're a piece of dirt if you're not Muslim. That's what it comes down to, and really that's really what it is in a religion. You're an infidel. I think, like I said, like if you look at these charts, like there's 2 billion or 2.1 billion Muslims in the world, and I know not everybody's real religious, but the biggest problem always is the religious kooks on the top that control everybody else. That's always the problem. But that's out of 7 billion people, so it's close to 30%. 28% of the world is Muslim. So if you're looking at North America, you got like 2%. South America is like less than 0.5% are from Muslim. And so, like, if you live in the Western Hemisphere, you're not really getting in too much where you have an appreciation of just how you would be if you were in a Muslim country. You wouldn't be too high on the totem pole over there. So, what's good for one side is not good for the other side. So, there's a lot of correctness and truth to the WEC. I know sometimes I know many times our leaders are full of it too. But the Western ways about freedom and democracy or constitutional republic, supported with the Bill of Rights, is the best way going. It's basically fair all the way across the world, across the board, and no religion is special. So a lot of these other countries where Islam is predominant, everybody else of other religion don't have the same rights. So that's why Westerners can't appreciate what these people think. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, and I don't agree with that garbage with 911. I don't buy into, like, when they said we were attacked by, Islamic radicals. I know it was an inside job or whatever you want to call it, and I knew this from a long, long, long time ago. That didn't look right from day one. Okay, just being a little bit in the construction business too. And I almost don't disagree with the Western elites' goals. But, if I could see through it kind of easily what they're pulling, they sure don't know how to do a good scam, and that's the problem. But generally speaking, their goals are good. Islam actually is a problem, and this guy Muhammad is bad news from day one. I just can't believe this religion took off. I'm not even much into the Christianity stuff. As far as I know, Jesus could have been an alien for all I know. But, when you're looking at the red words in, say, the King James Version of the Bible, I guess I was born Catholic and we don't supposedly use that, but it makes the most sense out of all of them. You just look at the red words of Jesus. It doesn't say anything like Muhammad says. God, that guy's a radical and a half. He's a freaking bloodthirsty kook. That's basically what goes on in Islam. So, I got this, and this is actually off. I'll post a link on it. You can say some Jewish guy put it out here. I don't know who the hell put it out here, but it's a synopsis of someone who believes in Muslim. And I went over a few of these things before. People don't like hearing it, but the reason they don't like hearing it? The reason they don't like hearing it is because they're not under the influence of it. It's almost like, they watch on television an alligator or a grizzly bear or something like that, and they have no idea what an alligator or grizzly bear is about. They say they watch cartoons or something all their life, and they actually didn't know what it was. And it's almost like, why not feed them, or whatever. That's, and I'm not saying is people are Islamic or not human, but I'm saying is that faith is pretty bad news. And Muhammad is an evil guy. That's all it is. So that just made me their enemy by saying that, but what the hell can I say? He's an evil guy. Now, this was off of this, and just saying what it was, talking honestly and critically about Islam can be deadly because Muslims are the noblest of all mankind. And it gives the reference in the Quran. And I know they have a lot of controversy about that. While we are pigs and apes, in other words, everybody else is dirt. And and there's a lot of different cultures that get into this garbage too. They have the same attitude. There's a superiority complex, but everybody else is garbage and they're going to burn in hell for eternity. So there's basically a superiority, better than thou thing among Islam, and there's several other groups that have that too. So not to mention any names, but there's several other groups. Depends on how high up the food chain of religion you go. Usually the higher up it is, the more screwed up they are. Muslims are required to fight and kill all us non-Muslims, even though some Muslims might not want to. And you could refute this, but they don't have the capability to do that just yet. If, just assume Iran had a nuclear capability and military of the United States, I wouldn't even count to 10 before that would be used against the United States. And all you people that actually think Islam is okay, everything just should be fine, blah, 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 you would be dead or enslaved, one or the other. It's exactly the way it would play out. Because even though not everybody that's of that faith might think that way, all the guys that run it think that way. That's their religion. They're kooks. And, I don't like a lot of religions, but Christianity isn't as screwy as that. Even some of the stuff that went back on way back when. I know even during the Inquisition, they came up with all that wacky stuff with stretching people out and all this kind of garbage because they weren't allowed by law, by the religious law, to break the skin or break a bone. So they got around it by doing other ways. But obviously those people were evil. So, I mean, they got it in all religions, but it's like in Islam, it's really in there quite a bit. Like I said, a lot of people in this country don't realize what it's about as much because they're not under the laws of it. They're under something else. So they could theorize all this garbage they want, but they need to live someplace else before they actually figure out how bad it is over there. A perceived insult by Muslims about Islam, yeah, they got plenty of insults from me. Muhammad or the Quran requires death. That it's better to kill non-Muslims than it is to be insulted. So that tells me they should be killed by me. Leaving Islam also requires death, as both Allah and Muhammad said. So, since Muslims are forbidden from doubting any part of the Quran, we must assume that we cannot be their friends because they're stating that anybody who's not Muslim is a piece of garbage, should be killed. Muhammad married his age 51, married his child bride at age 6, and she became a non-virgin at age 9 when he was 54. So he's a weirdo too. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this. I went over some other things before about, and basically, anybody on the top of the food chain are the religious clerics. All these other laws they apply to all the other people that are in Islam, they don't apply to them. They could do whatever the hell they want. So basically, it's like a dictatorship. And these people make the Nazis look like nothing, if you can imagine that. These people in Islam make the Nazis that look like nothing. Now, I got to say something else. I've heard about this new thing coming up with, and I actually heard this for many years, gun control, anti-terrorism and all this kind of garbage. And it's going to go in through the United Nations. And, yeah, I knew it was garbage from, 20 years ago or something about the treaty-making power. When the United States makes a treaty with a foreign body, that becomes the law of the land and supersedes the Constitution, which includes the Bill of Rights, right? Which includes the Second Amendment. So, Hillary and her Muslim brother, Osama Obama, whatever his name is, it's going to sign a treaty with the United Nations to have a gun ban. So, you know, I don't know who the hell these people are working for, but, at one point in time, that's going to be the sorriest thing they ever did. This is where the elite who are trying to, like, control all the masses are basically killing the golden geese that are laying all the eggs for them because their freedoms are protected by the everyday people in the United States. And, I can imagine Hillary Clinton, how much clout and power she would have in a Muslim nation. What a joke. What a joke. So who is she working for? I don't know. I mean, some people say it's the Rothschilds. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know exactly what's going on with this stuff. But just as I saw right through 911 with the Twin Towers, and a lot of people did after that. And, at first, I was one of the first ones that picked up on that with the Twin Towers. It was a bunch of BS. And just common sense. I mean, as soon as you saw Building 7 go down, you knew something was freaking flippantly wrong with that. And, how much the payoffs were to Silverstein and all this kind of garbage. Not to say that, I mean, they could have just said, we got to go invade Afghanistan and Iraq. Fine. I mean, you don't need to go blow the building up. Or it could have demolished it without the people inside if they got to get rid of the asbestos. Screw the EPA. Why don't you just get rid of the EPA and you could just blow the stupid building up if you want a cheap demolishment, right? I mean, that's part of the reason they were doing it, too. Because of the asbestos, the stupid building was more costly, was worth less than taking out the asbestos that was in the Twin Towers. So, I don't know. They set up all these funky-ass rules and it screws them up. So this other rule that they're coming up with doing a gun ban, by the way, this is an M1 Gorayan from World War II, and they're actually screwing up their own deal. They're not going to actually be able to run the world in the same situation they think they got the power now. They're not thinking it all the way out. They're dumb. They're so smart, they're outsmarting themselves. And Hillary Clinton is amazing. I mean, she's actually destroying the entire Western way of life, but at the same time, she could not survive in any other culture in her position at all. So, piece of garbage from day one. But I would recommend that, before this crazy law comes into effect, actually I have one of these. It's called M1 Grand. It's kind of, the beauty of it is it's a very powerful weapon. It's an old weapon. It can be considered like an antique. It's very effective. It doesn't have any problems with having detachable magazines, yet it can be reloaded very fast. And they're pretty inexpensive. A lot of times you could buy these on surplus. They might have been sold to Korea, South Korea, and then they sold them back to the U.S. and then they sell them to individuals. So, and they're not much money, but they're still extremely effective. But it could actually guard the United States from problems with in the future because as the wealth transfer goes from the United States to the East, China and such like that. I mean, China is not, well, it has a pretty large Muslim population, but, it's Hindu, Confucian, and everything. But as power is transferred out of the United States and Western nations, by default, it's going to bring up the power of Islamic nations. And it's probably going to come down to a dirty hot war at one point in time. They always had this big fear about Russia. And by the way, actually in Russia, a lot of people think it's extremely Christian. Actually, in a lot of ways it is, it isn't. In the Russian army, a very sizable portion of the Russian army is actually Islamic. Very sizable portion. So, I don't know what these people think all the time, but I do know that a lot of the writings and a lot of things that have been said towards infidels, as far as I'm concerned, by default, since I'm not one of them, I'm their enemy. So I'm going to tell you that, the only way to actually defend freedom is with a rifle. when it comes right down to it. And our leaders are knocking that out of the loop by signing this treaty with the UN that's going to be the law of the land. You know, Hillary Clinton and Osama Obama, whatever his name is, our president. And I know they're not just doing it on their own accord. They're acting on the behalf of the elite. But I just got to say this. The elite are stupid. They're outsmarting themselves. I wouldn't pay attention to any stupid law they make about anything. Just do your own thing. Use your head. And any of these religious kooks that want to force their religion on you, you know, screw them. You know, the one thing I would stick with the most is called the Bill of Rights. I know you got the Constitution, and the Constitution is part of the Bill of Rights. But the Bill of Rights were added as the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, correct? And they were added because there was a fear of, by the anti-federalists, that the powers that would go past which was laid out in the Constitution, that the government would go past it. And the Federalists were arguing, oh, that can't happen, right? Because it says right here, this is the limits, this is all it is, that's all the authority you got granted. It's right here in the Constitution. But the anti-federalists insisted on the Bill of Rights. And, you know, number 10 is basically any other thing could be, basically the 10th Amendment is basically any other rights could be considered part of what belongs to the citizens of the United States, even though if they're not enumerated in the other 9. So you have other rights. It actually states it in there. The Bill of Rights is actually far more important than the rest of the Constitution. And that should be supplied as the global law of the land, you know, freedom of speech, right to bear arms and defend yourself, that type of stuff, right to due process. So, screw all the bullshit, you know, if the UN treaty says such and such, fine. Bill of Rights is the supreme law of the globe. That's the way it goes. Just remember that. And if you're a real total peacenik, fine. I mean, I'm a peacenik too. I mean, really, why? I wouldn't even want to. I'm actually far more into healing than shooting people. Really, I'm more into health and healing, long life, and all that type of stuff. Actually, I think people could probably live to be thousands of years old, or maybe live forever in his own body, if things are done properly with some of the stuff that's out there. So, but in the case of, you got radicals out there that just want to say they're God on earth and everybody else is dirt, and by their own religion, everybody else is their enemy. Screw them. Shoot them. You're just helping the health and population of the rest of the world. I don't understand how this religion got ahead so much. I don't understand a lot of religions. I think a lot of religions are screwed up. But Islam is pretty much on the top of the list of the most screwed up. So, that's the way it goes.